A woman claiming on her website to be a licensed psychologist since 1988, sentenced in Waupaca County Court today.
Bobby Studzinski entered a guilty plea after a woman came forward saying she'd received marriage counseling from Studzinski. Prosecutors charged Studzinski with 2 misdemeanors: unlicensed practice of psychology and forgery. Holly Brantley was inside the courtroom today and spoke to the alleged victim exclusively after the hearing. She's live now in Waupaca with more on that. Holly.
After entering those guilty pleas, Studzinski chose not to address the court. However, her alleged victim, Jessie Lala, did.
Not too long after being treated by Bobby Studzinski, I was gaslit by her into believing that I myself was the problem.
Lala told the court she sought therapy from Studzinski between August of 2020 and August of 2022. She said they eventually parted ways. She says it was her new therapist that noticed red flags when Studzinski sent her notes over about her time with Lala. Now, that therapist noticed oddities in her credentials. From there, she and Lala did their own homework. The criminal complaint says both Lala and her new therapist checked the state of Wisconsin Department of Safety and Professional Services for the defendant and her business, Raintree Wellness Counseling. In checking the website, neither had a license or certification to operate in the state of Wisconsin. Also, the Wisconsin Department of Health Services also said Raintree did not have any license or credentials filed with the state. Today, the judge ordered Studzinski to pay Lala restitution of $3,500 and over $2,000 in other court fees. We spoke to Lala exclusively after the sentencing.
I think I'm saddened that, there could have been a higher penalty, and there isn't. Like, it's not in his hands that there isn't a higher penalty, right? Mm-hmm. But I'm glad that she's been brought to some justice.
Now, we did reach out to Studzinski for comment. We have not heard back. Prosecutors encourage any other victims to come forward. Live in Waupaca, Holly Brantley, Action 2 News.